92% of the supplements today on the market are synthetic. Most people don't know that 85% of the supplements are owned by pharmaceutical companies. I show up at the deal to do the colon hydrotherapy. They weigh me. I go in and do it for an hour. I come back out. They weigh me again. I was 10 pounds lighter.
Wow.
I had dropped.
Welcome everyone. It's Gull Khan here, your money mindset expert. And today we have the absolute pleasure of speaking to someone who I recently was introduced to, someone called Tim James. Now, he may have heard of him. He has his own podcast, The Health Hero Show, and he has his own line of products as well as coaching practice in the segment of health and wellness, something called chemicalfreebody.com. So welcome, Tim.
Hey, Gull, thanks for having me on today. I appreciate it.
It's an absolute pleasure, Tim. So tell everybody what it is that you do. I've given a brief introduction, but tell everyone in detail who you are and what you do, Tim.
Well, what I do now is we do health coaching, which turned out, it's actually turned into more of life coaching, because in the beginning I was like, I transformed my health and then I started helping other people do the same thing. But health was just one small part of it. When your health gets better, then the relationships get better, the finances get better, the spiritual side of things get better, relationships, career gets better, everything gets better when you have this vehicle working better. So we're kind of like health/life coaching. We do private one-on-ones and group coaching and that. And then we have a raw food, real food supplement line with no synthetics, no binders, fillers, or flow agents, which hopefully I'll have time to share later how important that is today when people are consuming foods. It's a very sacred thing in what you put in your mouth. And then we also have the Health Hero Show podcast, where I just give a lot of information and interview a lot of cool people that have also transformed.
Fantastic. So that's where you are. That's where you are right now, and that's what you do at the moment. But let's get started. Let's talk about how you got started in this, and give us a backstory in terms of where you were initially, and how did you transition to be working in the health industry right now?
Yeah, it's actually kind of a crazy story, because I never thought in a million years I'd be doing this. I mean, I was always into health. I played baseball at a high level for about 30 years, but I grew up over in Eastern Oregon, and for those, it's kind of like Redneckville. I grew up on a cattle and hay farm. Between me and my best friend Mike McKinnon, we had geese and ducks and chickens and goats and cows and horses, and I mean we had rabbits and cats. We had it all. We had everything. Pigs. We had a pig. He was an FFA. So we grew up out in the woods, basically, with a bunch of animals around us, and we were big into hunting and fishing. That's just what everybody did around there. My dad, I kind of groomed on that when I was a kid, and got a little BB gun, and so if we hunted a lot, deer and elk and chuckers and pheasants and everything. So that's all we did. We hunted and fished. So what ended up happening was, fast forward, I get a family. I moved down to Portland, Oregon. And, you get a mortgage and you get into your career and you get busy. And then I stopped playing baseball because my kids were getting older and it was a big time commitment. And I started putting that time into them. And eventually I started gaining a few pounds, and then a few more and every year. And then I finally found myself about 38 pounds overweight and not feeling good. I wasn't sleeping well. I was very tired. Didn't have a lot of energy. I could literally barely get out. Only reason I would go walking is because I had to walk the dogs because they wouldn't walk themselves, and I was responsible for them. And then it got worse. Then I started getting acid reflux really bad. I was eating Tums and Rolaids. The doctor wanted me to go on to Prilosec, which is this like anti-acid deal. I didn't want to do it because it sounded weird. And then I started bleeding rectally when I would go to the bathroom, and that went on for 2 years. And I had my head buried in the sand that I didn't tell anybody. And finally, we were on a vacation down in northern Peru, just in a place called Tumbes, and just sort of south of Ecuador. And I had to be life flighted, basically, to a hospital in Lima and get an organ removed. And that's when I realized my life was like really out of control. And my poor health goal, it didn't just affect me, it affected everybody around me, because I ruined a vacation for people. We're talking a lot of time of planning and a lot of money. And so that was really frustrating. And, and here I come back, but I still don't know what to do. And I'm like, I read lots of books and eat 5 smaller meals of the day and do all this and eat more protein for, your muscles and drink milk for calcium and all for your bones. And I was following that stuff, but it wasn't working for me. So then shortly after that, a friend of mine on my baseball team, Kalei Mahoy, was diagnosed with cancer, and he was the fittest one out of all of us. I mean, he looked like an underwear model. And he ended up dying 80 pounds under his weight. on hospice, morphine drips, all that stuff. And he had 3 little boys from ages 6 to 17. Well, this was the first time that somebody my age had died of cancer. So it was like a wake-up call because, you know, my grandma died of brain cancer, my aunt had died of skin cancer, and they were older, and you expect people when they get older to die of something. But and cancer is a big problem, right? It's huge right now. So, but this was somebody my age, and then this was horrible. So we did a fundraiser for him because he didn't have insurance, and all of us guys, the big macho guys, were all crying at the funeral, and it was really a sad moment, especially for those little kids.
Yeah.
Well, fast forward a few years. One of my best friends, Charles Arnell, gets diagnosed with chronic lymphocytic leukemia at age 43.
Wow.
And this is a blood cancer and supposedly incurable. And the doctor said, hey, all we can do is give you chemo when it gets bad, it'll knock it back, but then it comes back with a vengeance, and then we'll put you on experimental drugs, and we hope to find a cure before you die. And that was like straight up what they said. So with that, he's like entrepreneurial, thinks outside of the box. He said, look, called me into his office, broke the news. I'm devastated. I think I'm going to lose another friend. And then he said, I'm going to go to this Hippocrates Health Institute in West Palm Beach, Florida. It's this like 65-year-old detox and nutrition clinic started by this gal named Ann Wigmore, healed herself with stage 4 colon cancer with grasses and juices and herbs. So I was like, okay, whatever. And, you know, but I thought he was going to die. I mean, because my experience was you get cancer and you die. And I thought this was like, how could he go to this little podunk place in Florida and heal himself when there's, you know, millions and billions of dollars being raised for the cure and all this genetic research? How could this little place beat the doctors?
Yeah.
And all these scientists and stuff. So I was like, yeah, whatever. But I went with him to support him because he was my friend. And when we got there, on the way, actually, on the plane flight, he said, hey, by the way, there's no meat, there's no dairy, there's no salt, there's no sugar, there's nothing cooked. So it was all raw living foods and all these fresh juices. And I was freaked out, honestly. I was like, oh my God, like no meat? I'm like, I'm gonna die. I mean, I literally thought I was freaked out. But if it wasn't for him having cancer, there's no way I would have went to that place. There's no way. Because of my mindset. My mindset was jacked up on health. I didn't really know what I was talking about. I mean, look at me. I was a mess. I mean, I had I had eczema on both of my elbows. I had a huge patch of eczema on my knee. I had this other skin problem on the back of my shoulder. It was disgusting. I was embarrassed, not just because I was overweight, but my skin looked terrible. My elbows would crack and bleed on my shirts or people's couches. And it was, I feel horrible because you'd forget about it, you know, and like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to bleed on your couch. So we get there on day 1, they put us on these fresh raw juices and purified water. My acid indigestion goal was gone day 1. I'd never since that day, January 1st, 2011, I have never had another Tums or Rolade. And I was eating those things like candy. I had them in my car, my truck, my office, by the TV at the house. And so I'm like, wow, I'm starting to feel better. And then I'm going around with like a pad and a pencil going around trying to interview everybody because I can't believe this place is going to help Charles. So I'm really negative Nelly mindset. Yeah. And guess what? All I got was these real people and real stories and, you know, heal themselves one after another. And I'm like, a lot of them were coming back the second time, bringing a friend that was now wanting to heal naturally. And so they really focused on detoxing and nutrition. And people think they know about detoxing and nutrition, but you go there, this isn't just a healing clinic, it's a school. There's 40 hours of lectures for 3 weeks. They call it the Life Transformation Program. So you get 120 hours of re-education on how the human body works, what's going on in society, and how to live a normal life in a crazy world, right? So, but what we think is when we go there, our mindset is that place is crazy and this is normal.
Yeah,
but that's not how it is. I mean, we have been so detached from nature, and we just need to get back to our instincts. We got to get back to nature, and the body can heal. So what ended up happening was when we first got there was a doctor came out. It was a 3.5-hour class called Internal Awareness, and this guy was really buffed. He had a lot of muscles, and I was like, wow, this guy's really got a lot of muscle on him, you know. And then during the talk, he said he hadn't had meat in 10 years. I just blew my mind. I was like, what? I was like, how is that possible? How could you have muscle on your body like that and you don't have any meat in you? So I'm sitting there going, what is going on here? Because he wasn't lying. And then he explained for 3.5 hours from the time you eat food and the time it goes in your mouth and time it exits your body, what happens. And he was trying to sell us on getting a colon hydrotherapy session or colonic. You ever heard of those?
Yeah.
Yeah. So for those listening, yeah, I'm like, you know, I'll go. So anyway, it's basically you sit on a tube rectally and water goes in and out of you for an hour very gently and it cleans out your colon. And I remember elbowing Charles and saying, hey, look, dude, I come here to Florida with you, but I ain't doing that deal. Yeah, I'm not doing it. And then by the end of the guy's talk, I'm like, I was the first one. Sign me up, because what he said is that most of us are carrying around about 6 to 12 pounds of impacted fecal material and mucoid plaques that are lining the small and large intestine. And you want to clean that out because it harbors harmful organisms, viruses, bacteria, mold, yeast, fungus, parasites. And you also have all this toxic chemical garbage from our environment that's in that sludge. So I show up at the deal to do the colon hydrotherapy. They weigh me. I go in and do it for an hour. I come back out. They weigh me again. I was 10 pounds lighter.
Wow.
I had dropped 10 pounds. Now, the record at that place was like one lady went in, and in 1 hour, she dropped like 26 or 28 pounds, something like that. She had a funk and gunk and junk that accumulated in her colon, right? And the Royal Society of Medicine says that 85% of disease starts in the colon. And after what I've learned in detoxing and working with people's guts, they're right on the money. So anyway, so by the end of 7 days, the first week, I'd lost 11 pounds. My energy went through the roof. I looked at Charles and I said, dude, you're going to live. I'm going to do this program with you. I'm going to eat all plants except for bacon. I'm going to keep that. And we're going to do this. But, and then on the plane flight home, I read a book called The China Study by Dr. T. Colin Campbell. And it talked about the soldiers coming back, 300 of them that were killed in combat in the Korean War in the 50s, and they dissected their hearts in their early 20s. These were men in their early 20s, in their prime. And they already had like 73.6% of them already had severe onset of heart disease. And what was it caused from? Overconsumption of animal products. It's the animal fat and the bacteria in the meat that actually goes through the cardiovascular system and causes an inflammation state. And I'm like, oh crap. Nobody eats more meat than me. I probably have heart disease. I'm 10, 15 years older than these guys. So I just cut out all meat. I went completely plant-based. And for those of you listening, I'm not saying that you have to do this to be healthy, because after 8.5 years, I've come back and I'll have a piece of salmon here and there or whatever. I do a little bit, but it's just like I eat just a lot of plants. So that's why I tell people, just add more fresh plants into your life and you'll feel better. So here's the best part of the story. In 2.5 years of following this lifestyle, when we got back, and it is a lifestyle, my friend healed himself of his cancer. He doesn't have cancer anymore, and it's been over 10 years. And he went from bankruptcy in his business and cancer diagnosis to new business, crushing it, no cancer, healthy, picked up his guitar, started a band, and he always plinked around on the guitar in his college years, but now he's just living life. And that's one thing that was really weird when I first got there, is that a lot of the people there would be like, oh, you have cancer. And they'd be like, congratulations. You're one of the few people on this planet that gets a chance to really live. And I was like, what? Or then it's because you're like, when you realize that you're immortal and you're like, man, I got to get my shit together. I want to live. I want to do something, because time is precious. And then these people start taking charge of their life, and then they heal. And the people that have the right mindset, they said, look, I'm going to heal. I will be cancer-free by July 15th, 2022, and nothing's going to stop me. Almost every single one of those people I've watched over the last 10 years makes it. But it's the people who are like, well, I'll give it a try, maybe so, or I'm in fear mode. And you live in fear mode. We know there's chemical reactions, cortisol and adrenaline. If you're not burning that up, it becomes a toxic soup. So the mindset, I can't even tell you how important it is to heal the body and to be happy. It is the number one thing that they taught at the Hippocrates Health Institute. And that's why they have really high quality psychotherapists there, to get you in the mind frame of wanting to live.
Amazing. Now, you've mentioned time and time again the fact that you had to change your mindset. What was the biggest obstacle that came across? I mean, how does someone who's a meat lover, because when you were saying this story, I love my meat, and I couldn't think that I could ever be vegetarian or go meat free. I love fish, I love poultry, I love lamb, I even love beef. I don't eat pork, of course, because of religious reasons I never have, but I do eat all types of meat.
Yeah. How
did you, and so I definitely understand, growing up on a farm like that, or having access to animals and being a meat lover, how did you change your mindset? How did you control your willpower? This is something which is how did you do it? Because I'm finding it sounds really good, but really, how would I even start? So
I know you were like me. I was like, just the thought of it, the proposition of having me, you start feeling weird inside, like my ribeye steaks, and I can have my salmon on rice with I love that stuff. And So there's two things. Number one is that my body went through a physiological change. When you go there and you start putting in all these fresh foods and sprouts, I mean, the juices were even half sunflower, half pea sprout juice. Their other half was cucumber, celery. That's the staple there. Living foods for a living body. If you think about it, every single animal on this planet, every creature actually, eats a 100% raw and living food diet. We're the only ones that cook our food. So that's the first thing to realize. So that's kind of an odd deal there. But I felt better. That was number one. And nobody could, I don't care how smart you are, or how a doctor or scientist, and you're telling me how great meat is. I'm like, dude, I've been eating that shit for 15 or 37 years. And now I got to this point where I'm molding. I got all these skin issues. I'm tired. I stopped eating it. I get on this stuff and I feel like I'm 19. I had unbridled energy. I felt like I literally told Charles, I'm like, dude, we found this fountain of youth. This is what everybody's looking for. Right? So I had that experience that nobody could take away with me, and that feeling of feeling young and feeling good and feeling vibrant again and starting to feel my ribs again. It was amazing. I lost in 60 days, I lost all that weight, and all my health is gone within 60 days, except for the huge patch of eczema on my knee. Now, it did take 2 years to get all the internal in my gut and all that stuff healed up, but it was okay. I was getting better all the time. The other thing is the education. Like, that's what I said, they educate you on stuff. And they were talking about sushi, right? So they went through these slides and they pulled out 1 square inch of sushi and they look at it under a microscope and it has up to 10,000 parasite eggs in it. And 72% of the parasites today do not die in the cooking process. But then people would be like, well, what about the Okinawans in Japan? They're one of the centurions. Well, up until 200 years ago, the Okinawans, all that raw fish was fermented. They stopped fermenting it. So now we're getting more and more parasites. And then fish today is the most polluted of all animals, because if you eat I was asking Dr. Clement this, that runs the place. I said, hey, look, I don't eat that store raised crap. I mean, we raise our own beef. I hunt deer and elk. And he's like, okay, Tim, let me ask you a question. He's like, where do those deer go eat? And I said, well, at night they go down in the fields and eat the farmers' fields. He's like, do they spray chemicals on those fields? And I was like, yeah, some of them do. He said, even if they don't, somebody 30 miles away will spray chemicals, and there's this thing called wind, and it drifts and it gets on the plants, and in that creature's lifetime, he said they'll eat that, and it's called bioaccumulation. All the toxins and chemicals bioaccumulate in the fat and muscle tissue. So when you're eating that deer or that elk, you're eating their entire lifetime of chemicals concentrated in the flesh. It doesn't leave. Now, that's where the sea creatures get worse, because not only do you have the bioaccumulation of each species, but you have biomagnification, because the little fish are eaten by the bigger fish, and up the chain it goes. So by the time it gets to a salmon or a bluefin tuna, it's massively concentrated with pesticides, fungicides, herbicides, larvicides, and the other 100,000 chemical fertilizers and toxins that are in there, plus the parasites and mercury, cadmiums, and lead. So a lot of fish today, as a lot of people know, there's a lot of heavy metal poisoning. We have this back in the Snake River and the Oahe River over in Oregon. They recommend you only eat like 1 or 2 fish every 6 months or something like that, because the mercury levels are so high. And mercury is one of the most toxic substances on the planet, and it can cause brain dementia and all this other problems. So you don't want to mess up your brain long term. It's just not worth it anymore, right? So, but for me now, I clean myself up. I know how to detox my body. So I'll have a piece of salmon here and there, but it's small, it's smoked usually. And, I don't make a big deal of it, because I'm always infrared saunas, I'm drinking tons of water, and I'm always detoxing on a daily basis.
A question would be then, so find that, I understand that animals would have, or because there are pesticides and chemicals, whatever, but then how would you find raw foods? Isn't the same issue there, that the plants are also contaminated? There's pesticides everywhere, and even in the seeds, is it organic seed? There's GMOs. Wouldn't the argue also come along there as well?
Yeah, so this was I had that argument too. So I was looking at it. Well, the first thing is, like, when they spray a crop, about 98 to 97% of what they spray in it leaves the crop and goes into the rivers and the tributaries and out into the ocean. Only about 2-3% stays on the plant, and that's what you consume. So you definitely want to avoid chemical plants. You want to buy only organic biological plants. Over here in the States, the little price lookup stickers on the vegetables have to start with a 9. That means it's organic. If it starts with a 4, that means it's conventionally grown with pesticides, fungicides. And if it starts with a 3, that means it was genetically modified. So we want to stay away from hybridization. We want to stay away from genetic modification. We want to stay away from pesticides, fungicides, and herbicides. We want to eat heirloom seeds, things that are natural strains that have not been messed around by man. And then you got a really good chance of having a healthy life. Now, I also looked at a breast milk study where they studied women that ate meat in standard American diets, breast milk in the babies, versus plant-based women that were just eating plants. Now, I don't know if those plants were organic or not, but there was like 98% less toxins in the breast milk of the plant-based women than there was for the meat-eating women. So that study right there was like, wow, okay, this makes sense. And the reality is like, I've been doing this for 10 years now, Gull. Like I said, I'll be 48 next June, and I literally feel like I'm 19 every day. I feel amazing. I feel great. I have unbridled energy. I'm doing trail running up in the woods. You know, it's just like I can do things that I want to do. If somebody's like, hey, let's go surfing. All right, let's go do it. You know, it's no problem. Let's go do this, you know. So I've learned to take care of my body and make it a temple. And I have that mindset now that I love self. I love self so much, and I want to be a good model for my children so they can copy me. And I want to be a good model for my friends and family and society, and give them permission to change too. Not that they will, but you know, you can't force anybody to do anything, but you can inspire people by your own actions.
I mean, I completely agree with that, absolutely. And I think that's you, and you really are being I think first and foremost, you're a role model to your children, and then to people around you. And I completely understand that, because that's my motivation for, you know, for what I do in my line of work. But coming back to your point, now I think before we start the recording, we were talking about the environment, and we were talking about the toxins in the environment, and we touched upon it a bit of here now in terms of plant-based food. But now the question would be here, Tim. There are so many, there's so much. The supplementary industry has just blossomed or exploded rather, and there are so many supplements out there. There's so many plant-based, you know, from Herbalife to Slim Fast to I don't know, to every fruit. I think there's fresh fruits or fruit juice or something along those lines. There's so many these supplement milkshakes or plant-based foods out there. How is that different from what you teach or what you sort of advocate? What's the difference?
Sure. Well, the first thing people have to understand is there is a silent killer out there, and I call them the no-see-ums. You can't see it. And these are these toxic microscopic chemicals. You cannot see them. Automobile exhaust, jet fuel, rubber compounds off of tires. Right now, your paint in your home and my home in the office here is off-gassing chemicals, and they're attaching to our mucous membrane and going down into our digestive tract. You can't see them, and over time, they bioaccumulate. They also bioaccumulate in the water we drink. If there's fluoride in the water, or chlorine, or chloramides, or all these things that can be in our water today. Pharmaceutical drugs, as an example. Where do people think they go? People consume pharmaceutical drugs, and then what? They defecate and urinate them and they go back out into the environment. If you drink tap water today, you're consuming all the pharmaceutical drugs that entire population in your area has consumed since the 1960s. In the United States, it's bad. 1 gallon of water in the worst places can have up to a half of a tablet of combined pharmaceutical drugs in a half gallon of water. So we're basically, and you can't see it. So it's no big deal. There's nothing in it. No, it is. It's a problem. Okay, it's a problem, and it bioaccumulates. Now, don't take my word for it. This is where I fell over backwards, and then this is when we started our company, Chemical Free Body. Type in have everybody, when you're done here listening to this podcast or watching this YouTube video, type into the browser umbilical cord and the word chemical. Umbilical cord and chemical. And you'll see the studies going back to 2005. They look for like 400 chemicals, let's say, in the umbilical cord blood of newborn babies and these young mothers. The healthiest people on the planet, supposedly, right? And they're finding like 250 of them. They found 71% of what they were looking for, and 180 of these chemicals cause cancer in humans, 212 cause developmental and brain disorders. And these studies kept coming out 2005, 2007, 2010, 2013, 2012. They kept coming out, but they're not being promoted on mainstream media. You're not hearing about it through the channels because those are controlled and those mainstream media is manipulated. You're only going to hear about this stuff from like podcasts like yours. So with that, I'm like, oh my God, we're all polluted. So I've been on a mission to bring awareness, because that's the first step to what's going on, and then give people the pathways to get that crap out of their bodies so they can start feeling better. I mean, it's a problem. When you think that we have over 100,000 man-made toxic chemicals that have been released, 2,000 new ones every year, and they only test 1/4 of 1% of these things before they're released. nobody's watching them. There's no watchdogs. Nobody's taking care of this stuff. You and I and our friends and family and our children are consuming these microscopic chemicals. And all you have to do is look at the death rates of children. From 0 to 5, the number one killer for children forever, accidents. And from 5 to 16, accidents. But today, the number one killer from children 0 to 5 is now brain cancer. And that is lack of hydration, that's chemical overload, and a lack of nutrition. And then from 5 to 16, accidents is still the number one killer, but now the number 2 killer of children from that age is brain cancer. It's a tie between brain cancer and leukemias and lymphomas. So these are toxic pollutants. And again, the studies show, the scientists and the doctors said these are body burdens. And a lot of these substances cause cancer, and they're bioaccumulating in our tissue and our brain and our organ systems, and they're causing problems. So I want to bring awareness to this. And I was freaked out. Now I'm not, because I understand it, and I understand what I do in my lifestyle on a daily basis is I'm always cleansing and I'm always detoxing. And when you do this, you can heal yourself so fast it'll make your head spin, and you won't age, and you'll have, like everybody else, and you'll have more energy than people 20, 30 years younger than you. And it's awesome.
I've got a question, okay, because I'm a parent myself, and I know you're a parent. How support this with your children? How would you actually support their intake? Because you probably know this as well. Feeding them normal food is a mission. How would you feed them something like this? Or how do you change their mindset? How do you approach them with this?
Well, there's 2 ways of doing it. You can be, just take over and say, this is the way it is. And then both parents have to be on board together moving forward. And you need to set them down and educate them. Because it's just like, hey, you're stepping, you're going to step on a landmine. Okay. Your life's not going to be good. Look at the kids today. The kids over in the States, they're overweight. I see them in grocery stores. I'm watching what they're eating. I see their parents. I'm like, oh my God. And it's hard for me because I know what the problem is, and it's not their fault. They're a product of a poor environment. You go into the grocery store, and I'll just put it to you this way. 85% of what's in a healthy health food store shouldn't be consumed by humans. This is a good health food store, and 85% of it's not good for you. So the other thing is to be the example. Start changing yourself and changing your diet, and lead by example. That's the best thing to do. I have this a lot with a spouse, and they're like, I really want to help my wife. She's got cancer. What should I do? I was like, change yourself. Become as healthy as you possibly can and live by example, and then maybe she'll come along. That's all you can do. That's basically all you can do. So, and then you asked me a question earlier about supplements. 92% of the supplements today on the market are synthetic. Most people don't know that 85% of the supplements are owned by pharmaceutical companies. There's pure synthetics, but they put little labels on them, and hey, we're from whatever, New Zealand or Montana, and they put a couple on there with a picture, and it's pretty with flowers, but it's a synthetic, and it's going to lower your immune system. Synthetic vitamins and all synthetics come from crude oil. They're acid-based, and they don't work well in a carbon-based body, which we have. So you want carbon-based supplementation. So 92% of the supplements, you have a 9.2% or 92% chance that what you're consuming in your cupboard is a toxic chemical. Now you're left with the 8% that are whole food or food-based, but some of them, they synergize with synthetic chemicals too, because they're cheaper. And then even if they have a really good whole food, real food product line like ours, they send them off to a manufacturing facility, and then they put binders, fillers, and flow agents that are toxic. So I don't know if you can see this on mine, but you see the red there? Yep. It'll show up in just a second. It says no magnesium stearate, no silicon dioxide. It should come in. No dicalcium phosphate. It's not really coming in this time, but it's there. So on all of our products, we put this red lettering in there saying this stuff so people can look at it and like, go check your labels. I'll bet you have some silicon dioxide in there, or maybe some dicalcium phosphate or magnesium stearate. Well, what's that? Why is that a big deal? Well, magnesium stearate can come from diseased cow hides. It can come from genetically modified corn or genetically modified soy that's going to mess up your hormone system. How many women are having thyroid issues today? Hashimoto's, all these Graves' disease. Silicon dioxide is a level 3 toxin on the EPA's toxin list, yet it's in most supplements. They use these as binders, fillers, and flow agents. So I'll give you an example. Americans, we like to have, when we buy something, we want our money's worth. So could you imagine taking a capsule, putting a few grains of synthetic chemicals in there, and then it's empty? No, Americans want it full, so they fill it up with fillers. toxic fillers. Or these flow agents, they're encapsulation machines, they go very rapid, and these materials would cake up, so they're anti-caking, so the speed of production. So it doesn't do any good for your health, but it's all about money, right? So our stuff is all gathered by hand. It's sun-dried or air-dried over a 1 to 2 day period under 110 degrees to make sure that the enzymes are still intact. So it's actually has life force when you take it. And it's just real food. And I'm not putting any of that crap in my body. None. So, and we help people get it out. I definitely wouldn't want to put it in.
Oh my goodness. I mean, you've given us so much food for thought, literally pun intended, not pun intended, but it really has been amazing. And I have, for one, while you were talking, was processing like, what am I taking? And I'm actually a very healthy person. I drink a lot of water. I do have supplements, and I pay, I pay quite a lot of money for it. I'm thinking, I have to check the labels on my supplements to know exactly what's in those. Oh, it's got me thinking, and it's not just got me thinking for myself, but even everyday things which I know are toxic, because I think because I'm an energy worker, so I'm very sensitive to it. I know that, everything else has energy, and, car fumes, and when you are inside and everything. But I hadn't put it to the kind of extent that you've actually mentioned now, that everything, even the paint on the walls, is giving off chemicals, which I do know intuitively, of course it is. And somehow it's having a detrimental impact on my body, because we're not supposed to be sitting in this sort of environment. This is a man-made, and it's not good for your health. We're actually supposed to be outside in the natural environment, and actually soaking up the sun and being connected to nature. So
it's because we are nature. People forget that.
Yeah, I think this is a very important point to make, to focus on. We are organic. And a lot of things that we deal with are inorganic. And by the sounds of it, what you've just told me, even the supplements we're taking inorganic supplements then, right? Because there's all of synthetic stuff in it. That's inorganic, and that's what's going to not exactly flow with our energy. So it's going to interfere with our energy. And I'm all about energy, so I completely understand where you're coming from. Just gives a lot of more research to do and learn a lot more to learn for ourselves and as parents, so that we can actually give our children a better start. Because at the moment, I think I'm giving them a good start, but by the sounds of it, I probably have to go and do my homework again and do more research on that. So
yeah, we help a lot of parents, like how to help them get pregnant. We help them with breast milk. We help them stay healthy, raise healthy children. It's very easy to do, because it's just plugging back into nature is what it is, and keeping them clean. So
yeah, it is. It literally is going back to the basics, which is really, really important. Something that we've missed, actually, hasn't it? So, what would be your tips for somebody listening to this podcast at the moment? What's your tip?
Well, Gull, I am very glad you asked that question. So I like to share what we teach, our core 4 secrets. This is before you take any supplementation, before you do anything. After having over 4,000 people to my house for juicing classes and live raw food dinner classes, I'd get all these people buying juicers and start juicing. But after 30, 60 days, the juicer's under the cupboard because it was expensive and it was time consuming, and then it's no support in the house or whatever, and they just like forget about it, even though they were feeling better. So I went and interviewed over 100 people, and I said, what do you need? And they said, I need something simple, I need a plan. So I went back and I thought, what could I share with them that would make the most impact with the least amount of effort? I originally came up with 3 things, and then we've added a 4th one. So here they are. Number 1, and less than 5% of the population is doing this. You drink half of your body weight in liquid ounces of purified water daily. And that's the key word there, is purified, because again, there's toxic chemicals in the water today. Now, if you're in the city, there's a little extra. The water also needs to be restructured, because if you're on city water, on high pressure pipes, that high pressure water coagulates those molecules, and then you just drink it and you pee it out. It won't absorb very well through the intestinal line because the molecules are too big, and it's like throwing a bowling ball against a chain link fence. It just bounces off. So the water has to be restructured, make it really tiny so it goes through the intestinal wall and go through that chain link fence, and it's a game changer. I had one lady do this, and in 8 months she dropped 50 pounds. She's trying to lose weight, right? It's so important for weight loss. It's huge. Your lymphatic system works with it to remove garbage from the body. Your lymphatic system works on water, oxygen, and movement. That's how we remove garbage from our body. Your brain not having enough water would be the difference between finding your keys or spending 10, 15 minutes hunting around for your keys. It lowers IQ when you don't have enough water in your brain. Now, anytime your body needs water, where's the first place it goes? goes to the colon, and then the colon gets dried and impacted over time. And that's why everybody's carrying around 6 to 12 pounds of this funk and gunk and junk, because you're not drinking enough water. It will absolutely change your life. It's the first thing people should do. All right. Number 2, less than 4% of people are doing this, and that's chewing your food until liquefied. This is everything. When you're eating food, you have teeth for a reason, right? They're to break your food down, but more importantly, you have 2 ducts in your upper mouth and you have 4 ducts in your lower mouth that secrete the enzymes amylase and lipase that breaks down your starches and your fats. So you work really well, chew your food really good, and then that amylase and lipase goes down into your stomach, and that's where it digests your starches and your fats. Now the proteins already have stuff down there that has hydrochloric acid and a substance called pepsin. That's going to break down your protein that's already in the stomach. And then off it goes through the duodenum, and it goes from acid to alkaline, and then goes into the small intestine and absorbs well for good absorption. Now, again, less than 4% of people are doing this. And here's the really cool thing that I learned from Dr. Gabriel Cousins, who's like 80 and can do 30 pull-ups. Okay, so I'm listening to that guy. And he said that when you chew your food really well, you're actually stimulating the meridian points in your body that produce serotonin, which is our happy juice. How many people are depressed today? A lot. Number 1 pharmaceutical drug selling in America is depression medication. You can increase, listen, I'm just gonna hold your hat on this one. You can increase your serotonin levels, your happy juice, by up to 500% just by chewing your food well.
Oh, wow.
Way more than a pill could do. It's amazing. So if you're depressed, start chewing your food. It'll change your life. Core secret number 3, less than 2% of the population is doing this. Now that you've worked really hard to chew your food and load that food with those enzymes, avoid liquids with meals. You don't want to dilute those enzymes, because if you do, you're going to go from good digestion and assimilation right back to gut rot and fermentation. Because there's only 2 things that are going to happen. Your body's going to digest it and absorb it, or it's going to ferment it and get it out, because the body's got to get that stuff out, because it's 98.6 in there, baby. So for the beginners, stop drinking liquids a half an hour before you eat, and then wait an hour after you eat and start drinking liquids again. If you're in stage 4 disease, or you're wanting to win an Olympic gold medal, or just look as young as you possibly can, or feel as good as you possibly can, stop drinking liquids an hour before you eat, and wait 2 hours after you are done eating before you drink liquids again, and then drink a lot of them. That's core secret number 3. And then the last one, core secret number 4, is to do some breath exercises or breath work prior to eating. Only 1 to 2 minutes. And why is that? We live in a stressed out life. Would you agree?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and even if you don't think you're stressed, you are. Because just driving down the road at 65 miles an hour, or 70 kilometers an hour or whatever, that's not a normal thing for humans. We're not supposed to move that fast. Could you imagine grabbing somebody from 1,000 years ago, throw him in a car, going down a freeway, and they're going 80 kilometers an hour? They're going to freak out and probably have a heart attack. What's going on? It flips them out. So we are stressed. We have emotional stress, work stress, family stress, COVID stress. We have all this extra stresses going on. Turn off the news, for God's sakes. That'll save your life. And what happens is that the blood leaves the organ systems and it goes out into the extremities in this fight or flight mode. So you can fight or flight. You can run. You're not going to digest your food that well. So here's what you do. Right before you eat, you just take a big breath in through the nose, and then pause, and then release out through the mouth. Just a nice, long, gentle, slow flow. And then repeat that process. And just do it for a minute or 2. Allow the blood to come back into the organ systems so you can digest your food. And guess what? Less than 1% of the population is doing this. You stack these things together, and I promise you, your health is going to radically change, and it's going to improve for the better. Your digestive health is going to get better. Your gas and bloating is going to get better. And I know this because we talked earlier. Before this happened, because we sold out of our green juice product, the Green 85 stuff. For 40 days we were out, and we were calling everybody and letting them know and all that. And people were like, I'm already feeling better on those core 4 secrets. They hadn't even gotten the supplements yet. Now imagine what happens when they get on the detox and the nutritional stuff, and they start getting all these chemicals and toxins out of their blood and their tissue, and they clean up their organ systems and their colon and their small intestine. You're going to feel amazing. So that's it. Those are the core 4 secrets. I hope you just start with one of them and get that down, and then go to the next and get that down, and go to the next, get that down. And you'll see it'll prove itself to be true.
I love them. I love all of them. water. I think this is just do a quick recap. The first one was water. The second was chew your food more effectively, actually, until it's actually liquefied. Thirdly was avoid. I think it was avoid liquids. Liquids with diet, and half an hour before, an hour after, ideally. But if you really want to go full out, an hour before and 2 hours afterwards, and then make sure that you consume a lot of water to cleanse yourself out. And the fourth one was to actually breathe deeply and to slow down, take deep breath in. And I actually do this as well. I have the 6-3-6-3 breathing method, where you can breathe in a long deep breath in from the nose, hold for a count of maybe 3 or 6, and then long deep breath out from the mouth. Breathe through your nose, hold, and then breathe out through your mouth, and you repeat that 3-4 times, and that will calm you and center you, and then go and enjoy your food. I love those tips. They're absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much, Tim, for sharing.
You're welcome. And be grateful.
Absolutely. I think this is one thing that I really do on a daily basis. Every time I consume my food, I'm thankful for it, and be mindful of what you're eating, and be grateful to divine sovereignty that you have such amazing food in front of you. So Tim, we have one last gift from you. I think you are offering a special discount to our listeners. So tell us more about that.
Yeah, if anybody would like to try any of our detox products, they can just go to chemicalfreebody.com. And then under the products section, there's actually a drop down that says savings bundles. That's where I usually send people to get started off, because you can get a little bundle discount deal. And we put a first time purchase 5% discount code on your first order. And that 5% discount code, just type in money mindset at checkout, and you'll get 5% off your first order.
Thank you so much for creating that for our listeners. Thank you so much, Tim. And to remember that all the links that Tim has been speaking about will all be in the show notes as well. So do know that. I mean, if you have the chance to write it down now, that's okay. Otherwise, if you come back, all of these links will be on the show notes as well. Well, thank you so much for being such an amazing Tim. I think we're going to probably have to come back, because I've learned so much from you, and I think there is so much more to learn. I would like to come and work with you, so I'm sure most of our listeners would as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me on. And if people would like to get some more information from us, again, they can check out my podcast, The Health Hero Show. That's all free. And I go deep on detoxing. I go deep on proper food combining and a lot of other cool things, so they can, just get to know me better.
Fantastic.
As well.
And all other links, the website for Tim will be on the show notes as well. Thank you, Tim. Thank you so much for being here and being an amazing guest and giving us so much. It's been slightly longer a podcast than usual, but I think we've all enjoyed, and we've enjoyed listening to you and learning from you. Thank you. And for those listening and watching this YouTube video or listening to us on the podcast, thank you so much for joining me. I will be back next week with another guest, with another fabulous inspiration story to help you along with your life and with your abundance journey. Until the next time we meet, this is Gull Khan signing off. Take care and bye for now.